Fandom Pulse. Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual 2025 removes orcs and edits lich terminology to be politically correct towards Jews. Yeah, that's what we're doing today. So, Fandom Pulse, of course, coming through with another Dungeons & Dragons update. I tell you, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, they're working overtime to make this game inclusive and DEI woke. All of the wonderful things that we've come to expect in modern times in our entertainment. So let's dive into this article. And before we do, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. YouTube dubs unsubscribe people. You can find me on Rumble and on Twitter. Dungeons & Dragons has been under scrutiny from gamers over the last year because of its new edition, turning the fantasy game system into a woke nightmare. And now critics point out that in the 2024 Monster Manual, Wizards of the Coast removed phylacteries from liches because it might be offensive to Jews and that orcs are missing entirely. Well, I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since I was a small child. Well, I mean, depends on how you define small child, but I was 7. So a long time I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons. Well, that's when I started. I haven't played it really that much in the last, how long has it been since I moved to California? 17 years or something. So I did not know that phylacteries were Jewish in origin. Something new you learn every day. With a new edition of D&D, Wizards of the Coast has already courted controversy with their changes to the game by adding a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda on top of their core rulebooks. D&D players, as a result, have been watching their beloved role-playing game of questing and fighting monsters turned into a political, cultural, and social conditioning tool by the Hasbro Corporation. Before the new Monster Manual began being promoted, the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide infamously incorporated BDSM fetish community practices in the game for safe spaces, having players make an X with their arms if they feel triggered by a situation and requiring a DM to stop the game and address the player in question. The 2024 Player's Handbook is filled with imagery of BIPOC and female characters at a margin of more than 5-1, with white male characters about the direct opposite of the demographics who play the game. Now, we've talked about this in previous videos. I'm going to talk about it again because it's not true. The ratio is 35 to 55. 55 were BIPOC and female, whereas only 35 were male. But that's not a ratio of 5-1. I wish, is this John Delarose? I wish you'd go through and just count the images in the Player's Handbook. You can get it on any flip for free. Just count them, and you will see that it's not a ratio of 5-1. Stop reporting on this stuff if you don't actually know what you're talking about. It's ridiculous. Dungeons & Dragons came under further scrutiny after it was revealed senior designer Jason Tondro penned a foreword to a history book on Dungeons & Dragons calling Gary Gygax misogynistic and accusing him of cultural appropriation. Yeah, it's terrible. Man, that cultural appropriation. Oh, boy. That's like the worst thing that you could ever do to a person is culturally appropriate them. So, automobile, that's got to be given back to white people. It's all right. We are the ones who invented it. In Germany, actually, was the first. It was a model automobile. It wasn't a real life-size automobile, but it was considered the first, according to my research. So all the countries out there have the automobile. Hell, the airplane. Oh yeah, and the helicopter. Oh wow. So basically, you're looking at not traveling very far, very fast. Good luck with that. I don't know what to tell you guys. This is so ridiculous that you think that cultural appropriation is a bad thing. And as far as being a misogynist is concerned, good. I'm glad he was. The fact of it is he was married for years, and I don't know how happy he was because I'm sure he did cheat on his wife, or I'm sure he did have other women in his life when he moved to LA and was engaging in drug-fueled extravaganzas with celebrities and such. I don't know if he was still married at that time, but if he was probably cheating on his wife. Gary Gygax is probably misogynist, but according to these people, a misogynist is somebody like me who's like, I long for the traditional situation, what is considered a more traditional situation where a woman is focused on home and family rather than having a career. I'm a misogynist. Oof, the worst. Horrible human being. Terrible. This prompted Elon Musk to beg the question as to how much Hasbro costs for him to buy the parent company of Wizards of the Coast and save Dungeons & Dragons from all these woke controversies. The 2024 Monster Manual has already fallen under player scrutiny after an official Dungeons & Dragons YouTube promotional video revealed strange situations where the monster gender was removed from the game. Yeah, I'm sure that... Is this a long video? I think this is a really long video.
We have the new...
Yeah, that's that interview, long video. This is the name of it. It's a new 2024 Monster Manual, everything you need to know. So you can probably get that on YouTube and watch it if you want to. In the video, Wizards of the Coast designers brag about turning hags, which were traditionally female, into creatures of either sex, along with dryads, another creature that was traditionally female. The succubus and incubus were also turned into transgender allegory. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Now, as a new article dropped about the contents of the Monster Manual 2025 edition, fans learned there are more problems with wokeism apparent in the volume. The article reveals that the Lich nomenclature of phylacteries has been removed so as not to be offensive to Jews due to its association with tefillin used in Judaism for prayer, and therefore the word has been replaced with spirit jars. I mean, changing the name of one word it's fine. If they wanted to change this, then they probably should have changed it to spirit jars, because that tells me what it is. I didn't know what a phylactery was, even I played D&D, but I'm not into the undead stuff. I don't like undead stuff. Doesn't make any sense to me. It's dead. Why is it still alive? It doesn't make sense. They're removing the word phylactery for woke reasons. But hey, I hear the word spirit jars, or the phrase spirit jars, and I know exactly what that is. It's a jar with a spirit in it. All right, got it. On top of this, sphinxes also have had gender classifications removed and are called celestials instead of monstrosities because of how they are depicted in Hinduism and Buddhism, adding yet more political correctness to the game. Yeah, okay, now this one is obviously politically correct. It's ridiculous too, because the Sphinx has a human head. It has a cat body and a human head, right? We all know what the Egyptian Sphinx looks like. That's the point of the Sphinx. That's why it's weird. It's not a lion. It's not a human. It's somewhere in between. If you want to go, oh, look, we have a giant cat with wings. And in this case, it doesn't look like it's a very big cat. So it's just a regular sized cat with wings. And now it's Rainbow Bright cat with wings. Yay. Just what I was hoping for. Because we got to be inclusive to the Hindus and the Buddhists. How many people out there are Hindu culture, Buddhism, are playing Dungeons & Dragons? I think there's 3 altogether that counted them. It's not very many. The most important change to the Monster Manual is a section on orcs. Orcs were removed entirely from the new edition. Whereas the last edition had 4 pages of information on evil monsters, now they are only mentioned in an appendix table aimed at converting them to new monsters. So what this means, if you didn't follow appendix table converting them to new monsters, is probably for updating the old edition so you can play the old adventures from the 5e version of Dungeons & Dragons in the new version of Dungeons & Dragons. It appears as if the Monster Manual doesn't understand monsters at all in the new woke edition of Dungeons & Dragons. As of yet, D&D has not stated it is producing any new adventures in 2025 as well, which is odd given there's a new edition of the product. It seems like WotC might be cutting their losses as they know they have trouble on their hands. What do you think about the new Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the reason that orcs are being removed is because they have now become player characters. Now, half races do not exist in the new version of Dungeons & Dragons. There's no such thing as a half-elf or a half-orc. Those were mainstays of D&D all the way up to the 5e. You could play a half-orc, you play a half-elf. Now you have to play a full-blooded orc. You have to play a full-blooded elf. There's no half. In Dark Sun, there was half-dwarves. They were interesting. They stood over 5 feet tall and were really muscular, so a lot of fun to play those. People like playing those. D&D historically has had orcs in the Monster Manual. They've been removed because, they're goodly now. They're not bad. They're not monsters. But these people are so stupid, they don't know what D&D is all about. Orcs don't need to be in the Monster Manual. None of the player character races need to be in the Monster Manual. But if you're going to have this game where anything living can be a combatant, and it's even some things that are not living, I refer you to Knights of the Dinner Table. Orcs should be in the Monster Manual. This is the original Monster Manual here. We can just take a look here at the table of contents. Let me zoom in on this here so you can see it too. D, what do we have under D? We have, dwarf. Oh, dwarf is in there. Huh, dwarves are monsters. Didn't matter what your alignment was, in D&D terms. Your alignment means you're good or evil, whatever. Didn't matter what your alignment was. If you were a living thing in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, you were in this book. Because look, we have elf. Down here, we go down to G, we have gnome. Down here under H, we have halfling. And you might be thinking, aha, there's no human. Ha ha ha. Humans, they've been removed. No, humans were called men back in those days. And we have them here under M for men. In fact, it was in the 70s that this book was written. If we go back here, I don't know if you've read any older books. It's right here, 77, 78. It was in the 70s that this started to change. That we started to make this change from referring to the human race as men, as man. We would call it man, mankind, or men. If you read older books, you'll see that a lot in older books. So it's interesting. And you might think this is sexist, and I don't care, because what if it is? Who cares? Doesn't matter if it is or not. But men were listed in here because they could be potentially combatants. It's like, look, they have Jaguar here. Well, Jaguar can be a combatant. It could also be a pet. If you're a druid, you can befriend a Jaguar and make it your pet. I don't see why this is such a big deal. You have lynx here too. Lynx. Again, lion, lizard. Well, what kind of lizard? There's a lizard man too. Hey, what do you know? Why are lizard men evil? Isn't that racist to say that lizard men are evil? And they are trying to, erase that, saying like, oh, look, it's lizard men bandits that are attacking. How long is it going to be before they say, oh, goblins are a stand-in for black people? Oh, they're a stand-in for Hispanic people, for people with dwarfism or whatever. It's so stupid that they're going to go through all this. Men were considered potential combatants. They were put in the Monster Manual for that reason. And this was carried over. I don't remember the Monstrous Compendium if men were in there. I'm sure that this stuff was all in there. It was in 3.5. In 3.5, they had dwarves, and they had elves, and they had half-elves even. They had halflings and gnomes, but they did not have humans in 3.5 Monster Manual. I don't know why, but they didn't. It doesn't make sense. If you're going to have every other player character race, why not toss in humans? Why not just leave orcs in there because they're monstrous? Oh no, they're not monsters. And I don't care if you want to play with orcs being goodly. They're all goodly. They cannot have an alignment of neutral or evil. They all have to have a good alignment. I don't care. If that's how you want to play your game, go play your game that way. But this whole reason they're doing this is because they think that orcs are stand-in for black people. Okay? I don't know what to tell you. If that is the case, then that's the case. I don't know what J.R.R. Tolkien wanted to do when he was setting up his world. I don't know if that was what he was thinking at all. I doubt it. But I'm not him. I don't know him. Maybe he wanted this to be that way. Robert Kuntz, one of the D&D originators, had this to say about it. They are now a species, referring to orcs, and in the player's handbook, from what I understand. Orcs, born of Tolkien, understood to be specially tortured and changed elves and mutated life forms, born for pure evil purposes by wizardry and monstrous in kind, have now been added to civil society as just another species occurring in the evolutionary chain. They were just misunderstood all along, you see, and it is now your fault not to recognize that when they are slipping a blade into you. Yeah, so there you go. That explains where Dungeons & Dragons was coming from. And what he goes on to say is, this is utter drivel, creative hackery at its best, a literary appropriation and postmodern obliteration of Tolkien's work, and efforts now made a mockery of on the world stage. Yeah, so he points out it's a mockery or postmodernism and obliteration of Tolkien's work, and he could very easily be referring to this, I don't know, Rings of Power. Is that what it's called? Rings of Power series on Amazon, from what I can tell. It has made the orcs out to be like, just misunderstood refugees who are coming to the civilized lands of the world for a better life. They're not bad people at heart, or they're not bad people in their nature or in their origins. But we know that's not true. Orcs are evil. And like I've said, if you want to play in such a way that orcs are not evil, go ahead. It's your game. Play how you want to. And if you want to play a game that's already set up and designed and ready to go, where orcs are not inherently evil, play Shadowrun or play Sovereign Stone. I've mentioned these games before. Whatever. But anyway, you can link to this here. This is the original Monster Manual, like I said. It is on the interwebs for free. You can go through it as much as you want to and look at all of the different monsters and creatures in here. Now, the one that's interesting, I'll point out as an aside here, the Basilisk. The original legend of the Basilisk was dismissed almost out of hand because it stated that if you looked at a basilisk, you would die. So people in the Middle Ages realized, it's like, oh, I guess nobody would know this thing exists because everybody who's ever seen it would just die. Right? So it doesn't make any sense to have the basilisk the way that it was in the original mythology. Interesting stuff, but there's a lot of fun stuff you can look at in here. You can see that there's very light on description, and they're more focused on the combat abilities of the monsters in here. And the reason for that is because D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, is not a role-playing game. Since it's not a role-playing game, what do you freaking care if the orcs are stand-ins for anything? Besides which, orcs are kind of cool. A lot of people like orcs, and they prefer to play orcs. Like, oh yeah, they might be a little bit stupider, but they're stronger and tougher, and they can see the dark, and they have tusks, and they're just like badass warriors. So I'm going to focus on being a badass warrior. I can still be smarter than the average orc, which would make me smarter than the average human too, in many cases, and be also tougher and stronger than the average human. So why wouldn't I play this character? I've done it. I played orcs before. yeah, they can be fun to play. I didn't think my orc character was black. I just thought he was an orc. I don't know. I don't get it. But then I'm not woke. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.